I wanted the album to be about positivity. I was trying to blend a lot of different genres together in hopes of being able to bring a lot of different types of people together. I feel like country music is such an incredible space for people to tell stories, and there are a lot of people that, for whatever reason, aren't able to connect with it. And so I figured if I could reach across the aisle and bring in some elements from R&B and hip hop and pop and gospel, that we could create a project where people could all really agree on something. I think anytime I put together a project, I just want to be in service of the song. And so some of the songs that I wrote on the project were with other artists who I felt would be really nice additions. I had the idea of getting Thomas Rhett on Praise the Lord before we had him on there. I was like, I don't really want to put this out until we get him on there, but with Here For It or Throw It Back or Told You I Could Drink with Ingrid and Keith and Lady A respectively, all of those songs just came out of us being in the studio and creating the music together, and it made sense from that point to move forward. But I also have some really cool names on the writing side who didn't end up getting represented vocally on the songs, like Sam Hunt and Ernest on County Line or Ryan Hurd on Happy Song. They're all incredible artists in their own right, but it didn't make as much sense for them to hop on those songs, and so they're just on them as songwriters. And I always try to look at collabs as what's really going to elevate this song. If I'm gonna have someone else's voice represented, especially on this debut album where I'm trying to be really mindful about making sure that my voice and stories are heard, I wanted to make sure that all of these features really served a purpose, and I think all of them do, and they all add a lot of great value just vocally, but also what they represent. It's kind of crazy that this is the debut album because I feel like we've been at this for a while, and I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's been pretty quick. I put my first song out 3 years ago, and had to deal with the whole pandemic and a shutdown, and didn't put some music out for a few months during that. But to be able to have people like Keith and everyone represented on this project, but to have other features with Keith and Gary LaVox and Nelly and Dierks Bentley and some newer artists like Tierra and Tennille Towns and Maisie Peters from the UK. These are all collabs that have come out of a mutual appreciation for writing songs and being able to tell stories in different ways. Having all those people in my corner this early on in the game has been helpful because I get to learn from all of them, and we get to share stories and experiences with one another, but also because it yields some really cool music. With that one, I wanted to have something that had kind of a nod to 90s country. I did a cover of Strawberry Wine by Dina Carter and had a chance to sing it with her at the Opry and the Ryman, and write with her as well. And that's one that we do that cover out all the time, and it does so well with audiences regardless of age because everyone seems to really appreciate and reminisce fondly over 90s country. So I figured with this project, if I could have one on there that kind of felt like that, it would go really nicely in our set, coupled with the Strawberry Wine cover. And Shania is one of my favorites from that era, and I felt like if we could do something that felt like that in some way, it would be a lot of fun. And so I wrote that song with my producer Sam and Sean, as well as Cambo, who is one of the co-writers on Fancy Like, and I know that he just has all these clever little phrases and concepts, despite being kind of more recognized as a pop R&B hip hop writer. But the energy that he brought to that song, he was the one who was like, we should do a song called Natural, and it'd be like, she's nice, cold, natty. And I loved the idea, and all those other little tongue-in-cheek lines of, barbecue baddie, southern and sassy, and the song just kind of wrote itself. But definitely sonically, we were in that space with the shuffle tempo and having that type of swing on the song, the key changes, some of the instrument choices that we used. We were definitely kind of paying homage to Shania, and it felt right to include her, even though it's not a direct sample like some of these songs that we're seeing now with Cole and Sam Hunt and Kane. It's not a direct sample, but it was enough of an interpolation that it made sense to bring her in and get that clearance, and for her and Mutt Lange to actually to clear that sample is pretty dope. that was another concept that was brought in. I was writing it with Breland James and Rocky Block and Jacob Durrett, all three of whom I think are really representative of where Nashville and country music are headed. You know, anytime you see guys in their 20s and I guess 30s kind of bringing this new energy and having such a mastery of concept and lyric and melody, and they also know how to write stuff in other genres, it's like, this is the future of Nashville. And I knew when we all got in, we were gonna make something great. I just didn't know what it was gonna be. And Breland came with that concept, and I loved the flip on the phrase of like, you know, for what it's worth, this. I finally appreciate you for what it's, you know, appreciate your love for what it's worth. I was like, that's great. And the song kind of wrote itself. All of the songs on the project were pretty easy to write, and this one was no different. We all kind of spitballed a lot of different lyric ideas and melodic ideas, and in probably an hour and a half or 2 hours, it was done. And we were kind of trying to figure out what to do with it. Once we wrote it, we pitched it around, shopped it around for a little bit, but the more I listened to the demo and was kind of putting together the rest of the project, I was like, we need this feeling on the album. And I think for us to have a project called Cross Country and have all of these kind of songs that may only tangentially approach country, it felt really good to have a song like this, which I felt like was a lot more traditional country, and you know, gave us something that we felt like we could take to country radio as well. It's a meaningful song. It's a maturely written song. It comes from a perspective of wanting to hold yourself accountable, and you know, also wishing the best for someone that you're no longer with. That was an angle that really resonated with me and has seemed to really resonate with listeners so far. I'm a big fan of Lady A, and Charles has become a good friend of mine, and we wrote this song at a time where he was still drinking, and that's kind of what the song was born out of. And hopefully we can still sing it together and appreciate it despite the circumstances. But I'm wishing him the best on his journey to sobriety, and I have so much respect for anyone that can look themselves in the mirror and have those hard conversations to be able to say, you know what, I can do better. And he, you know, hopefully he's able to get well soon and get back out on the road, because I know people would love to hear him sing this one too. You know, Praise the Lord was a concept that my buddy Rocky Block came in with. Jacob Durrett and Kyle Fishman had made this kind of mess around, simple little just this little lick. And he played a couple ideas for us, and then played this one, I think third or fourth. And when we heard it, we were like, all right, now this is different. You know, I'm like, I haven't really heard anyone do this before, and it's something I think I could do. What would we say? And Rocky was like, we praise the Lord for all these different things. And I'm like, okay, well, that's simple enough, right? And so we just kind of filled it in, and it came together really quickly. And then we kind of wrapped that chorus up with a, you know, praise the Lord that I got everything I want and need and more. I might turn up on Saturday, but first thing Sunday morning, I praise the Lord. And it was like, oh man, this is so good. And you know, it reminded me of experiences that I've actually had, you know, going to church in college and as a young adult, and maybe having been out or played a show the night before and had a couple drinks. And it's like, that balance is something a lot of people can relate to, and it's honest. And it also is redemptive as well, which is like, hey, even if you do have a night like this, like, would you rather me go to church the next day or not? You know, and I talked to my parents about it because they're ministers. I was like, I just want to make sure that this is more tongue-in-cheek and not just straight up sacrilegious. And they were like, nah, like, I think this works. You know, what's the message? And I got Thomas on the song. We debated about some of the lyrics and made some changes that we thought would elevate the song. And his verse was so clever and easygoing, and he sounds great on it. So, you know, just the whole process of that song, from the initial inception of us writing it to ultimately sending it out and getting a response from Thomas, and a positive one at that, to be able to put it out, debut it at the ACMs, and to see the success of the song and how many people have engaged with it, and how much of a staple it is in our live show. It's a special one. I'm really happy about it. I only had a couple songs out at the time, and Keith came across, I think it was an interview that I had done in the New York Times, and I guess resonated with what I was saying about music and genre and my process, and he listened to the music I had out and reached out to me really early on. It was probably end of May, I think, of maybe early June of 2020, still kind of in the middle of the lockdown. And he asked me when I would be in town, and I told him I would be at his house in the morning, and literally, drove up from Atlanta where I was living at the time. And I was just playing him some different ideas of song starts that I had and seeing how he felt about them. And when he heard Throw It Back, he was like, we should work on this. And I was like, I mean, this is pretty ambitious, it's a different type of song. And he was like, no, I love it. And I'm like, okay. And he wrote some verses, and I brought my producers in, and we workshopped it pretty much all afternoon. He sat down, laid a bunch of guitars. We already had the chorus, but getting him on that verse, and he wrote another verse as well that I ended up writing a different second verse. But just the energy that he brings on it, and having that stamp of approval too at such a pivotal early moment in my career. It took us a while to actually get the song out. From when we wrote it to when it came out, it was over a year. But sometimes it goes like that. And when it raised its hand again the following summer, I was like, I still love this song. I still want people to hear it. So we put it out as a single, and it's one of my best performing songs and has done well overseas as well. So it's cool to see how something goes from that moment into a long relationship with Keith that's yielded a lot of other music as well. But for that to be the first one that we did, it's always gonna have a really special place in my heart. I mean, I wasn't expecting to hear from Keith in that moment, so it was definitely kind of a mind-blowing experience. And it just goes to show his foresight and vision, at a time when people were still kind of sussing out, like, okay, who is this guy? Like, what does he stand for? And he was able to see the heart of the thing and resonated with the message, and it's one that he stands for as well. He told me when the album came out, he sent me a really sweet message, but one statement really resonated with me, which was that he said, your spirit is your genre. And it's just cool to hear that from him, given that he's had so much success in country music, but also as a pop star and as a rock star, and what he represents in this space. I think our values are very aligned. Yeah, it was pretty nuts. I mean, I've always been a big fan of films and short films, and that's a space that I would love to get into at some point. And this was a concept for the music video for Cross Country that I kind of came up with myself and my creative partner Nada Taha, and also the director James Larice. We all kind of spent some real time poring over this concept and how it was going to be shot. And the idea for the video was, what if my life had gone left instead of right? And then having this split screen video that kind of looks at different vignettes of parallels of what might have happened if I hadn't put music out, and what happened, an idea of what happened since I've put music out, and kind of comparing those two realities. And that video, I thought, had a lot of depth to it, and people really resonated with that one as well, just watching it. So for it to end up being accepted into the Tribeca Film Festival, which is one of the most prestigious of the film festivals in the world, especially here in America, it was a big deal. And they just started this category this year for recognizing music videos as short films, and to be in the inaugural campaign for that was pretty dope. Honestly, my favorite song to perform live has been Don't Look at Me off of the album. Probably between that and maybe Alone at the Ranch, just because I get to use a different part of my voice and kind of engage with the audience in a different way. They're a little sexier, a little bit more intimate with the crowd. So I've gone out into the crowd and sang to people directly. Like, it's a fun switch up from some of the turn up stuff like a County Line or a Praise the Lord, but also different than a For What It's Worth or a Happy Song. And I just love being able to get into my kind of soulful R&B bag and bring some of those vocals, and it's always been really well received. But I love singing all of these new songs from the project. We had been kind of really playing stuff from my debut EP and some of these collabs that I've had. We've really been playing those for since we started playing shows. So to have all of these new songs in the mix and being able to switch up our set and keep things fresh has been such an asset on the road. Whenever you're doing a festival or opening for someone, there's pretty strict time constraints because it's not your schedule. So we'll come out, we might have 45 minutes. If we're lucky, we might get an hour at these festivals, but you still have a hard cutoff. So you have to be really intentional about which songs you choose to play and which songs you don't. And it's tough because there are a lot of great songs now that, because we have a whole new album of material, that we might not get to play a song like Hot Sauce, which it tends to be a fan favorite, or some of these collabs. We might not get to do Strawberry Wine certain nights if we only have 40 minutes. So it can be tough to cut some of those songs that are staples in our set. And whenever we get to do a headline show, there's no real time constraints. We can kind of play for however long we want. I usually try to shoot for 75 minutes, but we've been known to go for well over an hour and a half. And I love having the freedom to be like, what do y'all want to hear? And then just give the audience what they want. And I'm excited for the Here For It tour this fall because we get to do exactly that. We'll be opening for Russell Dickerson for a couple weeks out in the UK and closing things out there with the headline show as well. So we have opportunities to play a lot of different types of sets, but definitely there's a slightly different approach when you're opening or playing a festival where you have those constraints, and then when you're playing a headline show and you don't. My advice to anyone who maybe doesn't see themselves represented in the genre that they're creating or is trying to find a home for themselves is that I feel like genre is fluid and it is what you make of it. I chose to come into this country space knowing that there really were only a handful of people that looked like me, and even fewer that were kind of blending the genres the way that I am. But there are so many people in the audiences and people who are listening to music and looking for music that represents all of the different genres that they like to listen to. So if there's something that you do really well, do it, and don't worry too much about everything else. If it's good music, people will eventually find it, and all you have to do is continue to be consistent. I would say the keys to a good collaboration, it's really just based on wanting to make a great song. And if someone presents a great song to me and I'm like, wow, this is an undeniable record, I don't care whether you've had 20 number ones or whether you're a completely new artist. I've done multiple collabs in the past couple years with independent artists, and I've also watched some of those independent artists go on to sign deals. And so whether my collab with them helped them accomplish that or not, I can't say, but it's cool to watch people that I'm like, wow, I called it. Like, you're talented and this was an amazing song, and now there are other people and industry gatekeepers that recognize it. But for me, it's always just been about what does this song mean to me? And if it resonates with me, I would imagine it would resonate with listeners, and that's really always been my metric. It's not that I won't release it, but I'm not gonna find someone else to do it, I had an idea for a feature for Happy Song and we weren't able to get it done, and I'm holding out hope that a remix is possible with that person, and if not, I have no problem putting it out solo. But as far as Praise the Lord was concerned, I definitely wanted to make sure that Thomas was on that song. I didn't write a second verse. I left it open because I was like, I think at some point we're gonna cross paths, and when we do, I believe he'll like this song. And I've always tried to approach collabs like that, I don't want to have a song that like 5 other people were like, oh wow, we all passed on that and now he's doing it with this person. Like, no, I wanted you to be on it because you were the right fit for the song. And I've tried to be have as much integrity in that process as possible. I mean, honestly, I don't think there's a big difference between rapping and writing other types of songs. Like, some of the people in Nashville that I'm seeing write these country hits, like Ernest is one of the best freestyle rappers I've ever heard in my life, even in the hip hop world. He's just a monster. He can just come off the top of his head. Ashley Gorley is another one of those guys that if you give him a microphone, he's going to freestyle. Probably not rap while he's doing it. He'll add melody to it, which is even more impressive. But I'm watching people in Nashville that have that ability. It's just the ability to write lyrics and focus on rhythm and rhyme. And sometimes you might make a sacrifice on a lyric to be able to get the certain rhyme or assonance that you want on a song. But even then, there are certain rappers like a J. Cole or a Kendrick Lamar that don't even have to sacrifice that. They're saying exactly what they want to be able to say in the way that they want to say it. And to me, it's just two different ways of telling a story, whether I'm choosing to do it more rhythmically in the form of a rap, or whether I'm singing, or whether I'm combining the two in a cool way. I feel like the second verse of Throw It Back kind of does a little bit of that, where we are loosely telling a story, but I'm also just kind of getting my bars off, and it makes sense on a song like that to be able to marry the two. But I've always been a big hip hop fan. I've also always been a big fan of telling stories and singing, and I feel like with cross country I have the freedom to do both. And it's cool to have those different elements, to be able to do a song like County Line, which is a little bit more hip hop based, or Throw It Back, but then to also be able to strip things down acoustic and come out to the middle of the stage and hit it for what it's worth, and across country and hit people in the heartstrings. You know, there's a lot of versatility, and I get to use my voice in a lot of different ways, which is always a good time, especially when you're playing for a crowd of people that they want to be entertained. If we get to keep mixing it up, then they're getting a bunch of different tastes of different styles. I'm listening to a little bit of everything. I've been listening a lot to Hardy. His songwriting, I mean, he's a buddy of mine now, and we've had a #1 together, which is crazy, but I'm always just in awe of his ability to mix country and southern rock and metal even, you know, in such a cool way, while still being very lyrically sound. I think what he's doing in country music right now and in general is so impressive. Outside of country, I've been listening to a lot of Alex Isley, who's the daughter of one of the Isley brothers, and she's got this like kind of neo soul R&B fusion. I just think she's incredible. I would say in kind of the pop world, I've really been vibing on the Jack Harlow album. I mean, he's a hip hop artist, but his stuff is so mainstream at this point. But he's still giving you real bars every single song, and he's someone that I would love to collab with. I mean, everyone that I've mentioned would be great collabs for the future. So stay tuned. I mean, look, I've got a long list of people that I would like to make music with, and whether it's in a you know, feature capacity or just as a writer or as a producer, I would love to get in with all of those people. Guilty pleasure. It's not a guilty pleasure because I think everybody likes this song, but you and me go fishing in the dark. That's just one of those songs that I don't know. It's like it's on like my turn up playlist because it just gets me hype. I don't really know why. It's not a guilty pleasure though. I will fully stand behind that.